Thank you to the few of y'all who've chosen to stay back after what looked like a very powerful, power-packed session. I am Chirag Thakkar. I am publisher at Bloomsbury, India, and it gives me great joy and delight to be here amongst all of y'all to talk about the story of the world's youngest people. As most of you know, 65% of the population in India today is young. It's people under 35, and that includes millennials, Gen Z, the incoming Gen Alpha, who are already or are likely to be our nations, our societies, industry leaders, influencers, creators, filmmakers, writers, bureaucrats, podcasters, YouTubers, poets, lawyers, judges, ministers, MLAs, sarpanches, artists, doctors, chefs. This generation, most of whom are already voters with adult franchise, are also likely to be protesters, petitioners, organizers who can also topple governments all in one breath. It is against this background that I want to set the tone for this conversation and start this discussion with two really brilliant writers, Anurag Verma and Ria Chopra, both of whom I've had the great pleasure of publishing this season. Anurag is the author of The Great Indian Brain Rot, Love, Lies, and Algorithms in Digital India. And Ria is the author of Never Logged Out, How the Internet Created India's Gen Z. Both are very different books, but also in a strange way in conversation somehow. Uh, Anurag and I are millennials. Ria is Gen Z. Uh, and both the books, in that sense, look at the internet. They look at the smartphone, the cyber cafe, mobile connectivity, internet and social media, and how these have transformed our lives in the last 2, 3 odd decades. But neither of their books is about the technology itself, right? These are social histories of how a generation lives, loves, thrives on the internet. So that's the discussion we're about to begin. Now that I've prefaced this, I want both of you to take a few minutes and talk us about your books, right? Why don't you get us started, Anurag, about what is the story you're pursuing in The Great Indian Brain Rot?
So, thank you, Chirag. Hello. My book, The Great Indian Brain Rot, like the title suggests that it is about quote unquote brain rot, which I always say is a very loosely defined word. And I think people got attracted to it because I think Oxford recognized the word or included this word. But brain rot is more about not really about what we consume, but more about how we consume the media. By media, I mean the information. By media, I mean the reels or whatever the data we consume. So there is something very chaotic and unnatural, I would say, quote unquote, about that. So brain rot is mostly about that consumption of the information and what it does to not just to the self, but also to the society, to the nation. So I have many chapters. The one is about love and loneliness. Then there is a chapter about caste, how caste, happen like how the whole discourse of the caste happens online. Then there is obviously the chapter about the misinformation on internet, and I use Sushant Singh Rajput's story, like what happened after his death, and how the entire social media went in a completely crazy zone, and everybody's spreading misinformation, which we also seen during the Operation Sindoor as well. So these even then there is a chapter on the meaning of the influencer. Like like you can be right now in any profession, but the influencer, the quote unquote the influencer as a side hustle still remains. Like you can be an IS officer, but still you crave for that real validation. So you will see so many IS officer making reels, or even any politician, plumber, or anybody. So that whole influencer culture, I write about that as well. Also about the teaching for the algorithm. So these are many different chapter about many different subcultures of the internet. But the larger question remains that how exactly is it changing this nation from both the social and political point of view. So I try to explore that in my book.
Thank you, Anurag. Why don't you get us started as well, Ria?
Thank you, Chirag. Like the name suggests, my book is about a generation that one day logged into the internet and then pretty much never logged out. I feel a lot of older internet users, millennials included, had a chance to form their identities offline, figure themselves out offline, learn social dynamics offline, and then started to get entry into the internet and figured out how the internet works and enmeshed themselves in them. A younger generation has now emerged and has now hit adulthood who pretty much went through identity formation on the internet. And that changes things indelibly for us. The internet is woven into our personalities, into the ways we interact with each other, how we identify, how we look at love, how we look at relationships, how we look at politics, anonymity, a bunch of different things. I am part of this generation, which is why this book was also very personal to me. But I have also woven in culture commentary, research. Like you said, the tech is not something I was so focused on, and neither, like Anurag said, was he. But even the business, the profit, and the larger social parts of it are things that I have touched upon. My focus is still the individual and the generation. This then is an internet story, but it is also a human story of what happens to you when you grow up on and with and because of the internet. And it's 8 chapters, 8 essays, all of which look at love, identity, anonymity, hate, representation, and other such values of ours that have been changed by the internet itself. It's out on 2nd December, so if anyone wants to grab a copy, you can pre-order it now.
In fact, copies of both their books are available exclusively at the festival. You can help yourselves to the bookstalls, get a copy of The Great Indian Brain Rot and or Never Logged Out, and get your authors to sign them. But I want to pick on this a little further and go a little deeper, Ria. What do you think has happened to the idea of the self for a Gen Z person that's lived on the internet, that was born on the internet? So in many ways, a Gen Z person is our digital senior from a millennial point of view, or from anybody older than 40, 50, in their 40s or 50s. A Gen Z person is older to us in terms of their digital age because they're more savvy. They didn't have to migrate to using smartphones and the internet, right? But what's happened to, so talk to us about what is this digital age that you talk about,
Yeah.
and also what's happened to the idea of the self for a Gen Z person today in India?
I'll talk about the first thing first because that's also something I've described in my book where I have made up this concept of what I call internet years. Increasingly, it has become very clear to me that our physical age is now equally as important as this internet age of ours, which is the amount of time that we've spent on the internet. Like you said, someone can be older to someone in terms of physical years, but the other person may have spent more time on the internet than them. And that shows in terms of not just their digital savviness, but in how they keep up with the world, the amount of information they're able to process, the language that they use to talk to other people, how connected they feel to the world and people their age and their generation, their participation in communities that are not physically around them, etc. It is also equally possible and happens so much in a country like India where everyone does not have equal internet access. Two people can be equal in terms of physical years but have spent different amounts of time on the internet. This is something I say whenever I do a talk or a panel. There are people in India who got internet access yesterday and they're just as old as us, right? So that makes a difference in terms of how you interact and engage with the world. And the argument that I've put forward in my book is that internet years should be a measurable demographic marker that we take into account when we talk about Gen Z. Because then who is Gen Z, right? Like it's people who are, say, 18 to 20, 18 to 30 years of age.
And
But the
anybody
amount,
born after 96, 6 and after? Broadly?
broadly, there are arguable multiple definitions about what exactly Gen Z is. But my suggestion in the book and my argument in the book is that the amount of time that we've spent on the internet influences our identity so much, visibly so, in terms of multiple effects being seen on this generation today. It is something that demographically, research-wise, we should be taking into account, especially in areas where digital accesses have huge divides. Now coming to the point of self, which is so interesting and something we can endlessly talk about when we talk about selfhood in the digital age. There are multiple psychological theories about what exactly the self is. You can go into religion if you want to about who am I is the most basic human question.
And there are so many ways to answer this as well, and we don't have enough time to cover all of them. I think what categorizes digital selfhood amongst young people is one, the idea that there are now multiple selves of you, who you are in person, and you might just be an entirely different person online. I have friends who are introverted, but then somehow they are famous creators with 1 million plus followers who are openly making dance reels on Instagram and talking to people, etc. This fragmentization of your selfhood is something that we see translated online. There are people who are hiding online relationships or their online politics, etc., from their families who may be very conservative at home. So there's that idea of a safe space for your actual identity being present online. And then, of course, the kinds of people that you meet, the discourses that you have exposure to, they change how you view yourself and the world.
Fantastic. Let's take off of that,
Yeah, yeah.
Anurag.
Yeah.
Do you think the self for a millennial person or anybody on the internet today, no matter their age, is it
Yeah.
an atomized self? Are there multiple selves? That's one part I want you to address.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
other is the access bit that she was talking about. Does everyone have equal access to the internet? When did this access story change, and who got left out and who got in at what point? You talk about the post-geo story, right? So come to that later. But first, address the self question. What does the self look like?
Question, especially for millennial who has, like you also, who has seen the world before internet. It was extremely different. So we have seen that world where there was no smartphone. And in fact, in the initial day, there was also some kind of a resistance to the smartphone. So when I purchased the smartphone, I decided that I'm not going to be like those other person who have apps installed on their smartphones, who use Instagram, who use Twitter, Facebook. So I will not have the apps on my smartphone. But that was long back when my screen time might be 30-40 minutes. Now it's 10 hours, and I have all the applications that are for the consumption. But also the idea of the self for let's say somebody like millennial is that we are little scared of the internet, like because we are not grown up with that. Then we have to think what to upload, what to post. Like there are many friends of mine who say that they don't want to post anything, their face on the internet or the YouTube. But in the current age when the social media has turned into, let's say, a monetization business, and there is no greater monetization than the self, then I think the idea of what you are and what the self you want to monetize also become very distinct. So for example, I might have a certain image online, and that is for consumption of the people, but this is also possible that I would be very different. I can be a very different self in the personal life. So these two distinction also become, and internet also gives you the basis of internet is also based on the idea of anonymity. It's say you can be anonymous and you can choose your username. So Anurag can be Rocky Superstar 325, or it can be Shahrukh Lover 379. So myself can be created in so many ways. That's what internet does. So that's a very interesting debate. Maybe if we have more time someday, then we can talk about many philosophical aspects of the self as well. But I'll leave it to that. But the second part of the access to the internet, I think it happened post-geo world, as I call it in my book.
And what does that mean?
Post-geo world, when the internet became extremely cheaper and it was so easier to navigate through the bylines of the internet. For example, Chirag, you must remember that before that we have to go to cyber cafe. For example, cyber cafe was also...
I do remember that.
Yeah, like the Orkut days, we have to go. So we'll write a scrap, then we'll come 3-4 days back after that to
Ask
check
for a
who replied.
testimonial
Ask
from a
for
friend.
testimonials and all these things. So that was a very different era back then. But I think after 2014, then obviously Airtel came and internet was very expensive at that time. But after 2014, you can, scroll endlessly and you are addicted to this particular medium. That have opened up so many different kind of creators, so many different kind of people who have entered. And also because there is, as I said, the aspect of the monetization. Now everybody wants to earn through internet. Like for example, a few days back I was at my house and my house self said that कि भैया आप कुछ मेरा cooking video बना के viral कर दो. Make a cooking video of mine because I cook very well and I want to be viral. So this is just a single sign that everybody now wants to viral and have their own share of that monetization money that is available. So that has turned everybody into the content creator, everybody into the creator, which I say with the respect, not with the deriding like everybody's content. No, I am saying that everybody can have their fair share of chance in this particular creator economy. So this is, I think, a very interesting change.
Fascinating. Let's take off from there then. Do you think we've come to in a post-geo world that Anurag calls the India that we are in today, post-2016, when Geo gave everyone free internet to reel customers in, and then they started monetizing it, and that's when the last standing person supposedly in India also got access to the internet, the person we forgot about, right? Tier 2, small town, rural India that did not have access to smartphones, that did not have access to cheap, affordable mobile connectivity was suddenly at the same level playing field as the rest of us, coming from the privileges we do or don't. But is it a level playing field? And what does this access look like for people? Does every person today with access to the internet stand an equal chance at becoming not just famous, but becoming somebody who's able to monetize this stream of income, make sense of their lives, and not be maybe cringed at?
I don't think there's equal access to fame. There may be equal access to the internet, but if you get to be famous or not famous on the internet is still determined by a host of factors, one of which being algorithmic favorability. Obviously, that is something all of us are prey to. If one day the algorithm decides that, no pictures from today, only reels, that's something that you have to do. And if you don't adhere to those rules being set by the platform itself, there's that. I think in India specifically, there's a lot of social fissures that also come into play when we start talking about who gets to be visible and who gets to be popular and famous online. Anurag is well qualified to talk about this also, and I would like to hear him talk about this too. But I think in general, class and caste divides that are so present, as well as linguistic divides that are so present in across India today, are very clearly visible online. If you look a certain way, and I don't just mean being pretty and being beautiful, but if you look rich, if you look polished, if you talk in English in a way that shows that you've been educated in an English medium school and you've had access to opportunities that teach you how to perform a certain kind of affluence and a certain kind of popularity almost online, that allows you to gain more followers. The algorithm will push videos that look pretty, that are set up in this very Instagram aesthetic way. I love how aesthetic has become an adjective instead of a noun, but if you look aesthetic, the algorithm loves you and people love you and your videos get shared. You only need to look at the caste backgrounds, the class backgrounds, even the religious backgrounds of some of the most popular creators today to see that the internet is not as progressive and as equitable in its rewards as we might want it to be. The divides that are present in society are largely present online. And of course, if you add the lens of gender to that also, if you're gender non-conforming and even if you're a woman, your internet experience online will be so different from the experience a man would have. You have to constantly think of a lot more things. The same way women in real life have to keep thinking of multiple things, like what I'm wearing, what time is it, do I need to go home now, should I tell my parents, should I send them like my location, etc. Being a woman online is looking at yourself not just from a male gaze but also from that algorithmic gaze. What am I presenting myself as? Should I dress a certain way? Will that make me go viral? Should I talk a certain way? Nowadays we have this trad wife content, and I don't know how many of you have had a chance to see it, but if
Stands for traditional wife, yeah.
It stands for traditional wives, and it's a new trend pretty much, though it's despicable to call it a trend. But if you perform a certain kind of femininity, that I'm a sari wearing, cooking for my husband kind of woman online, that is a short way to get popular as an influencer today. All of these things add up to performance and then add up to popularity as well.
Yeah, that's a great problematic to sort of take forward. I will say, the point that really sticks out is that the social realities of IRL life, in real life, offline life, is also what life on the internet will reflect. And it's going to mirror the same inequalities, the same differences. Anand Teltumbre, who's also been invited to this festival but couldn't be here because the Bombay High Court denied him permission to be here. Those are the conditions of his bail. Has written a prison memoir called The Cell and the Soul. And one of the things he argues also in the book is that the social realities of life outside prison are very much what life looks like inside prison for an under trial, for a convict, or for somebody who's about to be acquitted, right? So the caste hierarchies that exist outside prison are likely to continue to be emulated while inside prison. And like that,
Yeah.
life on the outside and life on the inside, on the internet and in real life, those same differences will percolate.
Yeah.
A Savarna person's access to the internet, a Savarna person's aesthetic on the internet will be necessarily not necessarily same or different from, let's say, a Dalit person's, a Bahujan person's, an Adivasi person's, a queer person's, maybe a rural person's, maybe somebody who does not speak English, that person's access to the internet. So talk a little bit more about what these differences look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much obvious that the internet is nothing but a unit of the society. So whatever is happening on the society will also happen on the internet. Like, there are many people in the initial days of internet used to think that internet is something which is utopia and society is like that, but internet is like that. But I'm saying that both are the same thing because same people are on internet. So for example, sometimes people say that Instagram is, let's say, casteist. But I'm saying no, Instagram is not casteist. It's the society which is casteist, and they then get a platform to say those things. So whenever you are studying internet, it's very much important to understand that it can't be divorced from the real life. And then the second thing about the myth of it being a very equal field, that is also, I think, well documented by now because algorithm also changes. In 2020 or 2019, I also wrote an article about reels and the casteism. And there, I like what Ria is saying, that I discussed about the quote-unquote aesthetics and how there was a pressure to use a certain kind of camera, certain kind of light. Then only you will be called as influencer. And we know that these things are expensive for most of the people. And those who are not fit into this will be called as cringe, or that new word which I don't want to say, CH word that people use for many creator. So it has become a clear distinction also. Like
Use
these
it in quotes, right?
quote like chapri. There is a online slang
And
that
there'll be various
people
words in
use.
various languages. What we
Yeah.
come across on our reels, what we think as uncouth, uncool,
Yeah.
not good enough. Sorry, go on.
So in fact, I used to say that there are pages that mock creators from a certain class background, and they are called reptiles of Kurla or Dombivali's dragon or something like that. But there are many cringe people who are from South Delhi, from South Bombay, but you don't see like that, reptiles of the South Delhi in that way, that tone. So there is also that kind of a distinction between that. And then the third part is also about the idea of the monetization itself, which becomes very central. So who get the brand deal, how they get the brand deal, what kind of brands are interested in you, that I think has some notion of class in that as well. One can go deeper into that. So that factor is, I think, also there. Initially, there were creators who had no idea how to deal with the brands or how to do it. Now, obviously, they have been appropriated into Swiggy ads, Insta ad, and all these things for a brief period of time. But regular flow of the brands and the interest of the brand and everything, which now changed in 2025, obviously changed. But in the initial day, it was not like that. So when I'm talking about the internet, also become tricky because every year the algorithm tweaks itself, new kind of demographic comes to internet. So it becomes pretty, difficult to make a sweeping or the broader statement. But I can look it from, let's say 2018, 2019, I can see these changes are happening.
Fantastic. Now let's talk about love, right? How our generation falls in love, falls out of love, what our notions of desire, intimacy, and love look like, how we date people, how we meet people, how we get ghosted, right? How we slide into people's DMs, and what this world really looks like, right? What is a Gen Z person's experience today on a dating app like, and what is the sort of temperature on this?
Whenever I talk about love on the internet, I draw a lot of caveats because people have a habit of looking at it in two different ways. there's a set of people who are like, love to is love only, and even if it's happening on the internet or if it's happening offline, like the emotion is the same. So everyone must be going through the same things. That is also partially true. There's another group that think the internet has changed love as a concept entirely, and what is happening now is something that has never been seen before. That is also true in part, but I feel the reality actually lies somewhere in the middle of that scale. Love is an emotion is still the same. Everyone has that universal desire of wanting love or wanting approval, validation, whatever you're looking for online. Our mediums have changed. Dating apps in particular is something I double tap on in my book because I feel like we are now at least 10 years into the boom of dating apps. Back when, Tinder first emerged onto the scene and claimed it would revolutionize the way young people were dating. I don't think it's happened in the way that they intended it to. My point of view on this whole thing is to just be careful of buying into this belief that somehow dating apps and like young people's look at love is reducing the sanctity of the emotion entirely. I feel like the same problems that existed offline are also manifesting online when we talk about love in the digital era. I personally think dating apps, for instance, are not particularly groundbreaking in terms of the kinds of people they match you with. They will always match you with people belonging to similar communities or classes. There are filters for that now. But it's not as transgressive and as liberal as we thought it would be.
Liberating
as how we thought it would be. I also find particularly interesting, and I'm just throwing thoughts out here, I love the vocabulary that has come up around love in the digital era. If there's one thing young people do well, it is putting terms to things. I love situationship, ghosting. I feel like these are descriptive words for something that did in some way also happen earlier. I don't think ghosting or like disappearing from your lover's life is something that can only happen now. But there's a desire to talk about it, to give it this vocabulary and to have these conversations. And I think the internet at least has created space for discourse around this to happen. And it is, I just want to add, it is progressive in some ways. Like there are people who meet and fall in love online who would never have been allowed to meet in real life. So those stories always do exist.
I was just going to add.
Ghosting in our age was when society decided to make your lover ghost because you chose to love in that conservative environment. Slightly dark.
Fair enough. No, but we know the price you pay in India today to fall in love and stay in love with somebody that society doesn't approve of. As a queer person, as a queer millennial person, my access to dating apps changed the way I fall in love. I met my partner through a dating app called Grindr, and we've been together for 9 years. But the same dating apps can also be a deep, dark hellhole that you can very quickly dive into. Dating apps have also, they operate with the same logic of market capitalism and choice capitalism, where you don't have to be bound by society's available options or don't have to be bound by, let's say, the person of the same tribe, the same gotra, the same caste, the same language, the same region, which are typical barriers and typical filters that society has always used in caste-based, endogamy-based society that we are, largely, right? Marriage is basically an arrangement of caste hierarchies. But at the same time, there is a promise of liberation that dating apps did bring for an interfaith couple, for an intercaste couple, for couples who live across borders to be in love. And we've all seen a lot of these stories, and we've also seen some really crazy stories, and some real crime also happened through these apps. Like we see of wives murdering husbands, husbands murdering wives, who've met through arranged marriages, for instance, right? The same inequalities, again in this case, are going to percolate and continue on. But how do you look at loveless loners on the internet?
I mean, dating apps with all the critique that people have, and I think still are very good, despite all the limitation problems that it has and how recently it became uncool. Although now it became cool again after Zohran Mamdani found his wife through Hinge. But dating app is still, I think, pretty good because if you look at the society, let's say in that, growing up in that time, around 2000s or, early 2000s, at that time the love was very, it was tabooed, and it was also extremely violent, if I remember.
Also, we
at
were
that
very
time.
repressed.
Yeah, repressed through it, and it was very regular to beat people on Valentine's Day, or they will forcefully tie that rakhi and everything, some Freudian thing which were going on at that time. So they used to, and they also say that if you have to love, then love your parents, don't. And they on 14th February every year they celebrate Matra Pitra Pujan Divas, which is Mummy Papa Day, and these things used to happen. So in the book I also write about one of the experience when there was, I think, Bajrang Dal or something like that, who stormed the cafe where we were sitting, and they started.
Happened with you?
Yeah. There's a chapter that they started beating some
Young
not
lovers
beating,
on a date with $200 in their pockets.
yeah. Just wanted to have shisha and everything, but they started, beating the manager and broke the glasses, and it was very dangerous. Even if you, like, for example, have to spend some time in some hotel or something, then they will not allow you even. I mean, sometimes even the people who are married will have to show the ID card, and they will question that we will not allow, people. So there was no space for lovers as such, and it was extremely repressed before, let's say, internet. After internet, you can criticize it from so many different angles, from the caste angle, from the gender angle, from the colorism angle. So there are many angles to criticize, but I would still say that whatever it was, before, like, there are people who also romanticize old world romance. I have no idea what it is. For example, I was watching some trailer from some Ananya Pandey's film, and she is saying that हुकअप वाले दुनिया में मुझे 90s वाला रोमांस चाहिए. But 90s में जो लोग जिए हैं उन्हें पता है कि that romance was what, stalking, there were attacks on women, and they were beating by relatives,
Abducting the bride.
So which 90s romance, what are you romanticizing about? I don't understand. So I think situation have become better, not perfect at all, but they are slightly better than how it was in the previous times.
I just want to add a couple of things. I agree and resonate with what he's saying. I think two things we do need to keep in mind is that one, dating apps by themselves are a business. And if two people genuinely meet and fall in love on a dating app to the point that they want to be together and delete the app loses two consumers. And that is not something they want. The apps and their algorithms like this are not made in your favor. They are not incentivized in any way to actually help users find love. That doesn't mean success stories don't exist. That's also part of the appeal of the brand and of the app. But it is not this utopia of, everyone on the app, there's a match waiting for you, and if you swipe enough, maybe you will find it. Like, that's not necessarily true. There's been a lot of research that only X% of users on an app get, X% of the matches, etc. There's that. And the second thing, I think specifically in a country like India, even if there are two people belonging to different communities who find themselves, on an app and they match and they fall in love, will that union translate to real life and be allowed by the conservative society that we live in is still a question. Like, is this progress restricted to just that internet aspect of meeting each other, or has society also evolved to the same extent of allowing that union to actually take place and transition to real life from online? I think these are open questions, and discourse around this helps resolve and bring us to some kind of, understanding of what is happening.
Thank you. I just want to say that I can barely hear each other over the sound of the other session. So if you want to ask them to reduce their volume or just turn up our volumes, we can barely hear our own thoughts. That'll be great. If you could just help us with this.
Yeah, I've mentioned that. I think there is a limit to which we can turn the volume.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so
Perhaps
I'm
that
sorry
limit
for
should
that.
also be enforced
Yeah,
there.
I think it's being enforced.
Great. So the other thing I want to quickly move on to is...
Just to add to that point, in fact, dating app, the structure of the dating app itself, like the UI UX, is pretty much now similar in the Shadi.com as well. Like, there is same kind of swipe left, swipe right, and exactly the same pattern happened, but it's obviously more sanskari than, let's say, dating app. So that's why I call Shadi.com as Tinder with Gangajal. So somehow there is purity associated with it, but the process, I think it's very much similar.
Okay. Uh, One other thing that I want to dissect, and maybe we'll have time for two questions between us before we invite some of you guys in to ask your questions and share your thoughts, if any, is attention itself. What's happening to our attention and ourselves through that? What is happening to what is now called the attention economy, as to how much attention we are able to pay to things in our life, to offline conversations, real conversations, and the average attention span today for a Gen Z person, for a millennial person, and for anybody who's chronically online, anybody who's extremely online, is it varies between 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 1.5 seconds. Maybe if you're somebody who has really worked on it, maybe a minute, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, right? But it's shrinking. How much attention we are able to hold, and what we are able to, the meaning making we are able to do in real conversations, in what we consume, and how we conduct ourselves, that is really shrinking. And every minute, every second of our time is monetizable commodity for big tech, for social media. How do you look at this attention economy as, let's say, a Gen Z person?
I think attention has always been part of market forces. Whatever you pay attention to, be it an advertisement, be it a film, an interview, a person, they then become more monetizable and they're able to make money just by virtue of grabbing your attention. That's how celebrity works, that's how film promotion works. That has always existed. I think specifically today, something that's different with younger people is one, of course, the decline in terms of total amount of attention span that is there. 10-ish years ago, I think the ideal time for an Instagram hook, which is that at what point in a reel do you drop your main argument or like your most important point, was around the 10-second, 15-second mark. It is now at 3 seconds, which shows that to just grab attention, you have to be that quick. Otherwise, people will lose interest and not give you their attention and just scroll past. So,
You mean when you're scrolling past,
Exactly, when they're-
3 seconds is the amount of time you will give to decide whether you want to spend the rest of the minute or
I've
whatever.
seen people scroll like this, like it's less than 3 seconds. It's just like at the speed of light, speed of internet, maybe if you want to call it that. So that's there. But I also think the nature of attention itself is changing by virtue of us having so many factors that are vying for our attention all the time. There's real life, obviously, but even when you turn on your phone, there's your Instagram notifications, there's your WhatsApp notifications, there's Twitter, there's email. Everything is in that one device. How many times have you not opened your phone to do one thing, been distracted by a notification, completely forgotten what that first thing was, and now you're knee deep in 15 Instagram reels, forgotten about how you ended up there in the first place. So I think this, the nature of attention, which is to say, the fragmentation our attention now has as a commodity, we are trying to use that same 3-second attention span to focus on 15 different things. We're so spread thin, it's reducing our attention prowess, our processing prowess. This is also called multiple things in psychology: cognitive overload, attention distribution. I have in my book tried to call it attention depreciation, where I'm trying to argue that if attention is a monetizable commodity, ours isn't worth very much right now because it's not in good shape. And I think these two factors are going to influence the attention economy when we talk about the internet going forward, because creators are now doing crazier and crazier things to make sure that those 3 seconds of yours are now theirs. So you have people pouring paint on their face, so they're doing random stunts, and I see parkour on my feed all the time because someone jumping off the building is the most interesting thing that my Instagram algorithm decides to show me. So I think people are becoming more bold in what they're trying to do to get attention, and the economy itself, the creator economy, is adapting to that.
I don't know if I'd say bold, but people are definitely becoming more absurd. What people are doing, yeah, that could be one way to look at it. What people are doing in this, what India is doing, what the world is doing on the internet in pursuit of fame, in pursuit of influencer status, there is a kind of absurdism to this, right? This doom scrolling that we're talking about, this assault on our attention economies, that we are willing participants of, that we are very willingly complicit in, is creating a kind of brain rot, which is the title of your book. How do you make sense of this absurd existence of being online
I
today?
mean, attention, I think there is an internet proverb that attention is like oil of this current generation. And I think the internet has also made us into a kind of seeker if you look closely. A scroller, like you say, doom scroller, somebody who's like just doom scrolling on internet is a seeker. But he or she doesn't know what exactly is he seeking for. So, for example, the experience of watching the reel for 5-6 hours continuously, you in that domain, and something is going on, somebody is dancing, somebody is crying, there you can also experience
Cooking videos
that something is happening. So in that 4 or 5 hours, you are seeker, but you have no idea what you're seeking. So after 4 hours, you realize that what the fuck I'm doing. So you like come up, and then you realize, okay, you wasted your 6 hours, you wasted your 7 hours. So it has become like that. But the good thing is that just like smoking, like some people call internet, like this addiction as a smoking addiction. So just like smoking, people realize that it is doing bad for our health. People have now realized that there is something extremely wrong in the ways these social media are designed, these apps are designed. So there is awareness for sure, but by awareness at the initial stage is nothing, but because the reason is that apps are designed, these social media are designed in such a way that there is such an intense addiction that it is very difficult to get away from it. And even in the personal life, I can sense that my attention has deteriorated. Like now it becomes very difficult to, like just like Ria said, that you are entering, like you just click something and then you have to go somewhere, and then you realize, why did I come to YouTube? Then you are watching something else. So it's also the experience of being completely lost in this world. Sometimes you are very disoriented for some moments. So this has happened, but I think people have recently realized that they have to do something about it. They have not been able to do anything about it, but at least that basic awareness has started.
I just want to add, like, this is a very doomer conversation to have, that, oh, our attention span is gone. We can get it back. Like, neurological research constantly shows that our brain neurons have a lot of elasticity. It is always possible to regain whatever attention spans you've lost. In fact, while writing the book, I could feel myself being able to focus on larger concepts and abstract ideas for longer periods of time. Like Anurag said, people are at this realization now. There are steps you can take. Just try to read more, try to watch longer things.
Touch grass.
Touch grass. Do a Sudoku. People at a Lit Fest are already showing that they have the ability to focus on hour-long conversations at least. So I think just retrain yourself. I just don't want us to sound like, we're mourning the end of our attention spans. It's there and you can get it back.
I also want to take a moment to appreciate all of you who've been able to hold your attention, not get into the temptation of looking at your tweets or your notifications. That means a lot to us. The few of you who are here and are able to participate in these conversations as active witnesses, because this is not a dormant conversation. We're not speaking to you, we are in conversation. So let's open this up. Try to ask us or share your thoughts, questions you may have, things intrusive thoughts you've had in your head that you want to air out. We welcome them. Is there a volunteer who could go around? We have exactly 5 minutes for questions.
We have 5 minutes. Any questions for? Yeah.
And also, please identify yourself and try to keep yourself brief, if possible.
Hello. Thanks. The question is this just a passing phase for an youngster? Like, in our college, our younger days, we used to have, our fun time, going to cinemas or skipping classes. We also had our, fun time in whatever generation we are. Is this just a passing phase for a teenager or Gen Z, or when they become responsible to take care of their life in 30s or 40s, their behavior may change or not? What is your observation?
Who do you want to answer? Any of them? Both of them?
Any of them.
In that time, these activities are the extra activities. Like, for example, you can go to cinema, but you are doing something at the same time, then you can go to cinema. Or like, you can go to cinema even like once in a week, or if you are cinephile, then maybe even if you go every day, then there is a small percentage of time that you are investing there. Or even bunking class and everything, that were considered as an extra curricular activity or vices, or however you define. But the internet currently is the central life. There is no distinction currently between offline world and the online world. That distinction has disappeared, and as I said, that it has become a employment tool as well. It has become the monetizable tool as well. So now people are extremely dependent on internet. So it's not just like a hobby thing, or it's not just a fun thing. There are like lakhs and millions of people who earn their livelihood through it, and other people have the aspiration to earn through it. So the aspiration is also there, and the people who earn is also there. And we know that whenever there is some possibility of earning in any field, then it is not going to go away anytime sooner. And I think we have entered into that phase. There is nothing which is looking back, or nothing regaining what existed before that,
Okay.
or once point of time.
Is it a passing phase?
I don't think so. I would like to think that when young people get a job or have a kid, they stop looking at their phone that much, because that is pretty much, what the question is. But every day I see my cab driver yesterday when I was coming to the airport was watching reels at the same time that he was driving the cab.
That's so scary. I always ask them to stop.
And I see parents in the park whose kid is just playing and they're scrolling on their phone all the time. And these are young parents who are now addicted to their phone. The average screen time around the world for people under 35 is 8 hours per day, which means that you're spending 1/3 of your day on your phone, which means you will spend 1/3 of your life just being on your phone, and they are not showing any signs of going down. So much as we would like to think it's a phase, I think we should accept that it's not. This is pretty much, and like how Anurag said, this is work for some people. This is also connection for some people. For some people, this is the only emotional outlet that they have, and why should we even think about taking that away from them? Why should they think about reducing this thing that's giving them joy? So I don't think so.
Got it.
It's
Got
a
it.
phase.
Okay, we'll have time for maybe
One more
two
question.
more questions.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, sir, in the lovely pink shirt there.
Do you think this generation Z, I mean the teenagers and in 20s, can they become very neurotic when they grow up further, and through their addiction, and it leads to mutation of their brain power?
Sir, I'll say that your generation could also lose the same thing,
No,
because
but-
my parents are also addicted, who are...
Everybody is addicted, generation. But just to answer about that fear, I think that fear is very legit. And recently, Australia banned that live streaming app called Twitch, which was very, very popular. So they banned it for like you have to be 16 plus to access it. And even in the Europe and many places, there are these conversations which are happening,
Yeah.
that maybe we have to keep internet away from the people for a
Regulation.
certain age. So that conversation has started. So that I think what you're saying is legit in some sense.
No Gen Z or millennial person has so far asked a question. Maybe you want to? Yeah?
Yeah, so I actually wanna ask about your opinion on young people, especially Gen Z, depending on the internet, like AI and dating apps for emotional support.
The question is, AI and dating apps for emotional support.
Yeah, there are people who depend on AI, like who
Oh,
don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
a
Okay,
friend
having
in real life.
relationships
Yeah,
with AI right now. Ria, do you want to take that?
I think it's the sign of a huge emotional void to have to turn to technology for assistance like that.
Do keep it brief. My apologies.
It's not a tech problem first. I'd say it's a social problem that is manifesting as a tech problem. This generation also has high loneliness rates and a lot of other mental health problems, etc., that are showing up statistically. So I'd say like this is a sign of that. I personally, since you asked for personal opinion, it horrifies me. And I think like we should just all try to stay away from using AI for any kind of, nothing beats human to human support. Like that is what life is about. And yeah, like it scares me. It's like Black Mirror and I hate it.
Same question? AI? And
Just one comment on that. Like these days, there are many people who are using AI for the therapy. So there is a debate among many people: is it good?
Closer, mic.
Is it good or is it bad? And what it is doing. So that AI therapy has become a kind of a buzzword. But I think it's as basic or as good or bad as any Instagram therapist you meet. So it's good to go to a certified person who is good. That can only help you. But yeah, there are many people who are doing it. So it's will be very difficult to comment it because I'm not from that field. So there are many people who are debating about that. Is it good or is it bad?
There's a lovely New York Times long form piece on this. I forget the journalist's name, my bad. That pursues a lot of people who've lost their lives, who were in intimate relationships, parasocial relationships, in therapeutic relationships with AI, and people who needed real help, who were severely ill, who've ended their lives because AI has enabled them to do that. And then big tech suddenly woke up to regulate it. Of course, I am not a big fan of the AI boom at all. Of course, to use it for generative purposes, like if you're stuck somewhere for a creative challenge, it's great. It is just a generative tool at the end of the day. For it to replace a friend's help, a caregiver's love, a teacher's mentoring, a relative's advice, AI is never going to be able to do that. So, go.
Even like the experience of that AI, for example, there is a berry. Okay, you are in the jungle and there is a berry in front of you, and you ask AI, hey ChatGPT, is this berry poisonous? And then it will reply, no, it's not, you can eat it. Then you eat it and realize that there is a poison in it. Then you write, oh, it's poisonous. Then AI will reply, yes, you are right, it's poisonous. Let me tell you 10 different kind of poisonous berries for you. So that is the
Don't go around eating berries in forests unless you know your berries. And I think that's our time. Copies of The Great Indian Brain Rot and Never Logged Out are available wherever books are sold here at the festival. Feel free to grab a copy if you would like to and get them to sign them for you.